What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Twilight Imperium Junkies podcast. It's your boy Henry.
And it's your girl Rand.
And we finally have some new TI content, folks. Codex IV is here, and Rand and I are here to give you our first impressions, reactions, takes on everything that came out that we have to play around with in TI land.
But first, we just had Stooge for the Throne Tournament Game 5 happen. The featured junkie was Matt, who was also the winner of the game Hello Third Junkie in the final. Let's go. We actually had co-commentator Nathan ask him a few questions after the game, so let's check in on that.
All right, we're at the end. Game 5. How do you feel?
Oh man, it was a kind of hectic last round because there was a whole bunch of winsling that was going on in rounds 4 and round 5. So in round 4, Walt got winslayed, the Nazroka got winslayed, a couple of people getting really close there. Oh, and as well as Titans like almost getting the win sneakily, and then they got slayed. So 3 winslays in round 4, and then start of round 5. I almost got winslayed because I misunderstood how the extra nullification field technology works, but somehow managed to kind of snag in a sort of last-ditch push to send my flagship and a couple of dreads with every ground force I could scrape together to retake Malice. Shot his Warsun out of the sky, landed, took the ground, was able to get the attachment, and score the 2-pointer with Fleet Logistics. So that was pretty hectic. It was quite the game.
Yeah, what a masterful end game for sure. We were talking about in the booth. We were in the booth and talking about the winslaying and how they were just trying to winslay you at some point out of nowhere when it definitely didn't look like you had the win. And they even went so far as to start calling out Jolnar at 5 points, even though nobody was looking at the Titans, which is kind of crazy because all they had to do was look up and look to the right a little bit, and they would have saw how close they were.
Yeah, I didn't even see that. Like, what was kind of a derp on my part is, Titans and I have we're really cool all game. That was one of the things that really helped my game is Jolnar was cool, and I got their alliance, which as extra is huge.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And then Titans and I were super cool. I was kind of worried that being next to each other, there'd be this whole kind of like, oh, like you're trying to move around in your slice, so I'm going to PDS you, and you're trying to move around in my slice, I'm going to PDS you, And it just wasn't really that way, and I wanted to keep relations kind of good. And, towards the end, Titans kind of went in to score fight with precision. I was just like, a couple destroyers moving in, like that's fine. Like, I'm not going to fire PDS. I should have fired PDS.
Yeah.
Probably could have got at least one of them, and maybe they wouldn't have scored that. That would have maybe impacted the game. But yeah, Titans got really close. It was a kind of clutch winslay from Jolnar that prevented them from doing that.
So we talked about this a little bit, but we saw a window for nullification when the necrovirus came to your systems with attachments, but no nullification.
Yeah, let me explain to you my exact thinking on that. So my whole logic is I had to save the nullification for Muat, because Muat with their hero, which they hadn't popped yet, would be able to pretty much nuke an entire system. That would cost me an attachment kind of regardless. So my whole logic was, okay, they're coming in. I can't fire PDS, but at least at the start of that combat, it looked fairly even, and I was like, okay, my odds of beating them are like pretty good, because even if I did nullify there, I would have definitely lost the game if next action Muat kind of came in with their Warsun, which I couldn't nullify, and nuked that planet. I would lose both attachments. So I had to save it for Muat no matter what.
Their hero, yeah. I completely lost track of their hero. Good on you.
Yeah, that was the whole reason I got nullification field in the first place. So I was like, yeah, I got that very juicy Barragler system, and I've heard that, and Susan is out there with their Warsuns kind of making problems for everybody. So I was like, yeah, that's probably a good idea.
Yeah, that was good stuff. What do you think the biggest derp of the day was?
Oh, geez. I think Titans not remembering that their PDS had sustained damage was a pretty big derp, because if they had kept the mech on the planet, they would have won. That was when in that last combat where Jolnar just had one mech that was just taking everything out and just annihilating an entire setup.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a derp. my derp in kind of misunderstanding how Nullify works. I thought, okay, even if Walt takes one planet, I can still use it to protect Malice, but turns out I need a ship there. That was a pretty big derp. Me not firing PDS at Titan's destroyers when they're going for fire with precision was a pretty big derp. I'm mostly paying attention to my own derps. I'm sure other folks had other derps, but those were some of the big ones.
Yeah, I thought we were going to see a lot more extortion out there.
Yeah, no, I mean, extorted a little bit here and there, but I mean, I had good relations with Titans and Jolnar, so I didn't really, and I was like, why not?
Yeah, you extorted just the right amount.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations again. We'll see you in the finals. We'll see who the real Stooge Master is. I mean, you got a sweetheart deal there towards the end with Beck once he was just out of it.
Yeah, no, that was definitely nice. Yeah, no, he did help me out. We were support partners. We were chill all game, good trading. And he was just tired of getting hosed and wanted to do a little hosing back. And so
we say a prayer for Beck in the comments below.
Yeah, he's a gentleman and a scholar. I'll tell you that.
Gosh, that's amazing. They are referring to an epic Neuraloop stooge moment going into round 5, where NRA purged multiple relics to fish through the objective deck and landed on an objective that was favorable for Matt. So that worked out for all us junkies in the end. And if you're asking yourself, what the hell is Neuraloop? That's what we're here to talk about today. So let's get into the Codex IV content. So let's start with the relics.
Yeah, the relics are probably the juiciest and most impactful inclusion in this release. We got 3 new relics. Overall, the thing I really liked about this spread of relics is that between just 3 cards, I feel like we're touching on so many different mechanics and elements of the game. We got anomalies, we got frontier tokens, we got some tech we can pick up, we have a control sub-objective, if you will, we have speaker token shenanigans, we got objective card shenanigans for the first time in TI4 POK. And if I compare these to the relics we already have in POK and the codices, I just do get the sense they feel a little more 3-dimensional or a little more multi-tool-esque. If you think about like, oh, Dynamis Core, it's a pile of money. Crown of Thanos, Comet Buff with Strings, Shard, it's a point. And so I feel like we just have these new relics that are doing multiple things at once, which is just fun and different.
So what are these relics? Let's go through them one by one, starting with Circlet of the Void, which reads, your units do not roll for gravity rifts, and you ignore the movement effects of other anomalies. As an action, you can exhaust this card to explore a frontier token in a system that does not contain any other player's ships. So that's, like you were saying, pretty multifaceted right there.
First of all, it opens up movement options. So other than the named gravity rift effect, all of a sudden we have supernovas in play, we have asteroid fields in play without anti-mass, we got nebula passage without hindrance.
And in addition to that, it's like a DET without having to research DET, which is pretty cool.
That is fun. I do always love drawing an exploration probe because I'm like, ooh, little bonus. Ooh, maybe I'll get 2 command tokens or something.
Yeah, and this is one every single round, which is pretty sweet.
That is nice. So my first thought went to the immediate impacts of this relic, which to me seemed like widening the field for some public objectives, like make history, become a legend. Those are the objectives where you need to be in systems with anomalies, or explore deep space and patrol vast territories. Those are the objectives where you need to be in systems with no planets, mostly because now you can go into supernovas.
Or even something more basic, like an asteroid field if you really, really didn't want to research anti-mass.
And also just not rolling for the grav rift means you have safer movement options around the board to get to those maybe basic empty systems, those basic anomalies. And what I also started to think about was that if you are the player with Circlet of the Void, there are some objectives that can be made unslayable or at least harder to slay via hanging out in a supernova. Raise a fleet or command an armada when you need a certain number of ships in a system. If you can get that fleet to a supernova, in general, you're going to vastly increase your chances of holding on to those points.
It's very true. It's similar in concept to chaos mapping for the SAR when they're in an asteroid field and that becomes an untouchable place for them.
Oh.
The player who has Circlet of the Void is able to do that with supernovas, as you said, and the difference is Nav Suite only happens once if you draw that action card. For this, supernovas are fair game as long as you hold this relic. So unless there's a Muat or you're surrounded by a bunch of PDS2s, you could be, in a safe haven thanks to Circlet of the Void.
And it's fun to mention Muat because their hero creates a supernova. So if you have Circlet of the Void, there's Muat in the game and they pop their hero. There's a whole nother tile that you can also have access to.
It's true. Sounds like you ought to stooge for the Muat player early on so they can give you favorable placement of their hero.
Oh, that's interesting.
That's something to keep in mind. Stooge for Muat if you got this right.
And I was also just thinking, it's not a huge boost, but if you had like the 5 Dreadnought secret, those are other ships you can hide out. If you had the secret to have a ship in 6 systems, again, it's just an untouchable place that just, even in these more minor cases, could provide you with a little more flexibility in how you score it or how you dodge a slay when people start to suspect you of trying to score points in TI, which we all know people are very suspicious of everyone scoring points.
That's true. There's also a defensive side to it of you need to hide units sometimes in TI in order to keep someone from winning in the action phase, and you may have found a few better hiding spots with this, so...
That's true.
It's a little more circumstantial, but you could, if you have a single lonely fighter in a system waiting to be AFB to death, you might have a hiding place for that now. Then you can hide your flagship away so no one can destroy your greatest, stuff like that.
And I will just say, I mean, it's a kind of a trivial point, but I do like that since the action allows you to explore a frontier token, immediately like a little nerd, I got excited about the idea of flipping the frontier token that gives you 2 command tokens without having to spend a command token to get it. So just netting 2 command tokens instead of netting 1.
True, a very nice, sweet net positive there. Also, it's a stall, which, can never have enough of those in TI.
That is very true.
And now moving on to the next relic, Book of Latvinia.
Go ahead and read it for us.
When you gain this card, research up to 2 technologies that have no prerequisites. As an action, purge this card. If you control planets that have all 4 types of tech specialties, gain 1 victory point. Otherwise, gain the speaker token.
All right, so we got a lot of shenanigans going on one relic here.
So first, what you get from drawing it straight off the bat. 2 techs.
That's nice. With no prereqs, so you're not going to be drawing this and getting your Nomad 2 flagship and War Suns all at once.
It's not a double Mauve Worlds, no.
So this points to this tech being most useful earlier in the game. And I mean, I would love it just to pick up Scanlink if I need planets with attachments. I would love it to grab anti-mass if I need to get units into anomalies.
And even if you do get it late game, it kind of gives you like the opportunity to get 2 small little benefits that you definitely would not have gone for otherwise in the game. Yeah, just a little sprinkle to your cake.
And of course, if you drew this after a tech 2-pointer flip, like 2 tech and 4 color or 3 unit upgrades, I mean, these could be the low-level techs that actually make you eligible to score those points. That sounds good to me. But I think the purge action on this card is where the spice truly begins.
Yeah, so there are 2 paths here, and one is straight up a point, which who doesn't love a point? We're playing TI, we're playing for points usually, so, love that, love that.
Don't watch my tournament game. I was not about the points.
So let's talk about this first part of the card.
Yeah, to control 1 of each color of tech specialty planets. To be honest, I genuinely believe in all my games of TI, I think I have never controlled a planet of each tech specialty. But I've also never had this much motivation to do so, given the point that you can score off of this relic.
An immediate reaction I had was this might be easier to achieve for NRA or even factions that started Scanlink like Titans, who dig through attachments regularly as they go through the game.
Yeah, that's true.
What I love about this is that it's a relic that kind of incentivizes combat. So we kind of had this with Tomb of Amphidia. If you draw the crown, I'm going for that planet. It was 1 spot. It was a hot zone. This is similar to that, but it's 4 hot zones, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah, I also actually just started thinking about the Ghost drawing this relic and having some nicely placed wormholes, being able to sneak around and snatch up those specialties. Though realistically, it's more likely that Mahakt and Yasaro will be the ones scoring this every time after they stall everyone out and then go around collecting their tech specialties.
This does seem like a hard condition to achieve, but I think that will make it all the more satisfying for when this point gets scored ultimately.
For sure. I mean, it's an extra point, which is amazing. And also, honestly, if you snag this and you are like grabbing a planet from every player's slice, I'm going to award style points. Even if you get slayed off of it, I think you get some style points for spreading out across the board like that. And I just think, I don't know, it just seems like interesting board states can come out of people having to be in more places. And anytime a card motivates players to get out of their slices, get into other people's slices, that is interesting and that's fun and that mixes up the game.
Absolutely. 1 VP from Relic and 9 style points. Something to note also is that to get this point, you purge the card during the round, unlike Crown of Amphidia, in which you have to hold on to it until after scoring. So you don't have to hold on to 4 planets with 4 text skips through the entire round. You just have to hold on to them until your next action when you're able to purge the card. Is it that much easier? No. But, consolation prize.
That is a good point because then we have fleet log in the mix, right? So there's something fun to imagine. You have a master plan, use fleet log, and all of a sudden, maybe you start a turn with like 2 of the 4, and there's some, I don't know, I think there's some very cool ways that you could go about managing to pick these planets up and score them and win the game. Like, this is cool because it's just an action phase win.
For sure. As you pick up the Book of Latvinia in your games going forward, folks, let us know what spice you see, because this is a new era of Relics for TI, and I'm excited to see the combat emphasis that comes from it.
Oh yeah, I want to see some reports on all the stuff that you guys are able to achieve that I can only dream of with these new relics.
All right, let's talk about the otherwise condition of this purge ability, which is just gaining the speaker token if you don't have all 4 types of tech specialties. So my first impression was, if I get this, I definitely try to go for the victory point route. And then I started thinking, actually, it really is dependent on the conditions of the game at that point. Sometimes getting speaker and getting the chance to take Imperial will net you way more than a victory point. So the harder condition might be more beneficial in more cases than not.
I think it's so funny you said that, Rand, because when I read the text of this card, I knew that you were going to spread yourself thin going for the 4 tech specialties to get that point. Given your history as an Imperial junkie, as a Mechatol point junkie, I knew that you would be like, oh yeah, I'm going for that every time. But I think people most of the time will just be like, that's too hard. I think we're going to see a lot more uses of this action just to gain the speaker token late game so that people are set up to score the points that are already available to them on the board and in better initiative order.
I totally agree with that. I think there are certain conditions that might make the control part more appealing, like QDN being in play, or expecting a Winu hero to move the speaker token around. But for the most part, I see that, Henry. I do think that just gaining the speaker token in itself is pretty powerful for a relic.
And thinking about it now, I'm actually totally on board with that. I'm totally on board with any way to decentralize the speaker token game from the politics strategy card. That might not end up being how it feels in practice, but when I think about it now in theory, because I do engage with the speaker game and worrying about like, oh, speaker's going over there and then that person's going to pick it and oh, then what's going to happen? I used to do this more in the past where I was always trying to figure out who was going to take politics. Was it going to be me? Yada, yada, yada. And we do have like politics writers to mix up speaker play. Like you mentioned, Ren, there's the Winu hero that, while normally is used for Imperial, could also be used for politics if they want to get into speaker position. Side note, politics writer totally decimated me when I played in the final at that Zulu's tournament we went to last year. Check out the vid. But adding another variable to speaker order to me does kind of mix it up in an interesting way. And personally, it frees up a little bit of brain space to engage with other parts of the game more that I do find more interesting than just like trying to track where the speaker token is going to end up. These are each one of 16 relics, so we're not necessarily going to see them in every game, but I actually do look forward to seeing this one show up. And I actually look forward to being the benefactor without even drawing this relic, because the person to my right draws it, takes speaker for themselves, and then all of a sudden, ooh, I have second instead of last pick.
Nice, that's nice.
Riding on the coattails.
Yeah. Also, as someone who is perpetually paranoid about certain agendas coming up, like mutiny, if you happen to know mutiny is coming up and it's kind of a dicey situation or it's unclear which way it's going to go, or whether you found this out through the Nalu commander or just information from the politics holder, you could grab speaker token and be in total control of what happens with your mutiny point, which is pretty sweet and pretty reassuring.
I like it.
And just a reminder that it's not only gaining the speaker token, it's also gaining the 2 techs that you get when you draw this card. So it's a nice little bundle. It's like a little gift, a package, care package, if you will. Here you go, enjoy this. It's going to help your game. All right, now the last relic released in this codex, last but not least, Neuraloop.
Let's take a look at the card.
When a public objective is revealed, you may purge one of your relics to discard that objective and replace it with a random objective from any objective deck. That objective is a public objective, even if it is a secret objective.
It's a lot to take in.
Wow.
So it's really exciting to get this relic because there's not another mechanic in the game that plays with what objective is going to flip.
It's true, and something else that's cool about it is it can be used more than once. So if you're playing Nazroka in a game and you get Neuraloop, wow, you are the master of what objectives are out there and when.
We are going to see them fishing for favorable objectives for sure.
It's also a great use for less desirable relics like Crown of Thalnos.
She didn't mean it, kind of, though.
I didn't mean it. Sometimes you're desirable.
I just think there's so many fun ways for this to play out. I love the idea of an early stage 2 coming out to shake up tempo. But really more than that, I love the idea of getting public action phase objectives. You know, they're secret objectives, but functionally public action phase objectives into the mix. The only other time we really see this is with the agenda that makes someone's scored secret objective public. But even if it's not optimizing for my game, I could see myself using this and flipping a secret and it's like Become a Martyr or Darken the Skies and just being like, that's fun that we all have access to that. That's fun that there's now a path for people to have more action phase wins outside of their own secret hand.
I agree. It is fun. It really does bring in extra spice. I was even thinking like Drive the Debate, an agenda phase objective would be so hilarious up there as a public, because every single minister that the table votes on becomes a point vote.
And just deciding who's going to get a point.
Yeah, that's incredible.
That's funny. So, like you mentioned, there are those factions that are going to end up with plenty of relics who could benefit. NRA, Titans, Empyrean, and honestly, with the way that the stage 2 objective flip can sometimes totally knock people out of the game or immediately be like, all right, we're going to round 6, you have to imagine we're going to see even a little bit more of Scanlink with this kind of swing available to players in the game. You have to imagine.
Oh yeah, I think all 3 of these relics ought to bring more Scanlink to the table. It's more paths to victory points that are less straightforward than just scoring secrets in publics. Also, the tempo math in general is less stagnant this way. I think playing 10-point games over and over again, you kind of know when the game's going to end, how quickly people are going to, rocket ahead. Obviously, there are exceptions and fun anomalies where it's like, whoa, that was an 8-point swing, or how are you still at 1 point? There are weird...
Rude.
Talking to myself, how am I still at 1 point playing Necro? It's happened. It's okay. Now it just becomes a little less certain, things could change all of a sudden. Everyone gets better engines because now there's a stage 2, or someone gets really lucky because this action phase just changed the game for them.
It is funny to imagine this scenarios. For example, like you draw the agenda where you draw a new objective. So let's say you get a stage 2 out from there. Then someone uses Neuraloop to draw another stage 2 objective. And then all of a sudden you're in like round 3 and there are 2 stage 2 objectives already on the table.
I mean, with enough relics, you could change every single stage 1 that's revealed after round 1 into a 2-pointer.
That's so true, and that's so wild. As long as you have the relics to spend, that's fun. That's so cool. That's so cool. I love it. I can't wait to try a game with this.
And if you are bad at tempo math already, like me, yikes, good luck. I hope luck is on your side as you're making the call on whether or not to use Neuraloop in your future games. Looking forward to the chaotic choices I will make if this is in my hands.
Oh, we're all looking forward to those chaotic choices.
Also worth noting, if you score all 4 secrets off Obsidian, that relic is doing nothing in your play area and you can Neuraloop it without any loss.
That's fun. Also, if you have Shard and there's no way you're going to keep it, like you somehow end up with Mirage in someone else's slice, ooh, purge that Shard.
If I can't have it, no one can.
I mean, really, I say it a little bit as a joke, but also you can imagine if you're scoping out people's paths and they need Shard.
Yeah, purging Shard
Purge that Shard.
Well, I think we're going to see Shard get purged for a multitude of reasons, which will be exciting to witness.
Also, I mean, of course, there's a bajillion deals to be made with this. Like, you could be talking about your own game, but also maybe you're indifferent to the objective that flips and you want to collect a big paycheck to flip something else. It's not like you're guaranteeing anyone an objective they can score, but if they want to pay for a chance to pull at that slot machine and get one that is a little more accessible to them, hey, I'd take that money.
That's true. Money they could also pay with relics plus a cost. If like, here are my 2 fragments. Please, whatever you get off this Neuraloop, the next objective into a stage 2, here's my TA.
Oh, that's fun.
And
I-
then as that person with Neuraloop, you draw obsidian and you're like, that's non-binding, go hose yourself.
Go hose yourself. I do like that idea of the table paying you with fragments to replace your existing relics. That's very interesting. I look forward to seeing how that all shakes out.
And that's about it for the 3 relics. They're all very exciting. I am going to have a blast when I finally get to draw each of these, maybe all at once. I look forward to playing Nazroka, that's for sure.
Definitely looking forward to Nazroka.
And now for the 2 updates on technologies. First, we have an update to X89 Bacterial Weapon. The new text reads, double the hits produced by your unit's bombardment and ground combat rolls. Exhaust each planet you use bombardment against. Yowzas. So that's wildly different from the original X89. Still focused on bombardment, but there's also a ground combat element now.
And exhausting those planets. Look, I mean, it's not a hot take to say this is not a tech you see people research all that often, but including ground combat is fire. And it renews my interest in X89, I think. I'll talk a little bit about that in a game I have going on later. But I also think actually the exhausting planets with bombardment is really interesting for slaying people's spend objectives, because you don't actually have to take the planet and win a combat. You just have to be able to bombard it.
Yep.
So if people are trying to spend 16 resources or whatever, and they're defended on the planets you can reach, if you just bombard them with X89, they're no longer eligible for the spendy.
It really helps with when slaying on spendies, that's for sure.
I mean, I guess technically the bombardment buff is actually less with this new version, right? Because in the old version of X89, if you got one hit, you destroyed all the infantry.
That's true. The only benefit to this doubling would be that those extra hits do apply to mechs. So I think the one downfall to the previous X89 was, a planet defended with mechs doesn't really suffer from being bombarded.
That's true. And I also want to add that I think the fact that it gives a buff to ground combat in general, it just means there's more uses for it. So I think there's a much better reason to justify researching X89, even if the bombardment buff is a little bit weaker.
That's very true. I will miss the old ability of X89 because bombarding a stack of infantry and just having that total wipeout,
That's
feels
satisfying.
good. It feels good. But I do think, like you said, this one is more multifaceted and will come in handy a lot more than the very situational and circumstantial version we had before.
Yeah, I mean, I just started thinking about the factions that don't really have bombardment units as their central fleet. Yeah, sure, if you're L1 and you're going around bombarding whatever, like that's normal. But let's say you're Argent Flight and you're just cruising around with your destroyers, X89 does nothing for you. Oh, now it doubles your ground rolls. Again, I'm not saying people are going to be sprinting past Grav Drive and Lightwave to pick up their armfuls of X89 bacterial weaponry, but I do have a little bit of optimism imagining a greater number of use cases for someone having this tech.
Yeah, it really meshes into the theme of green techs really well because you have things like Daxiv, you have things like Infantry 2. So if you're getting these greens, you are already on your way to X89, and that just fits in really well with the toolkit you're building now.
Side note, I also just find it thematically satisfying because I imagine a planet is getting bombarded with the bioweapon, and then they also have equipped like their ground forces with little guns that have the tiny version of X89 in it. So they're not only are you bombarding the planet, then your ground guys are like blasting everyone with their handheld X89. I think that's kind of funny. I actually just started an async game with some homies from our Discord server. If you're not on there yet, please come through, join the Discord. It's a very chill place. But I actually drafted L1 in that game. I have a green skip in my slice. L1 also starts with Neural Motivator. So I feel like I am kind of on the path towards having X89 in this game as L1 and really giving it a try.
Yeah, you said the first objective was 2 techs and 2 colors, so that incentivizes a green research right here, so...
I'm interested. And also because of an event card included in this codex we're going to talk about in just a few minutes, I should have pretty good access to the Sardak Commander in this game. So not only will I be rolling double bombardment with my O1 dreadnoughts, my ground forces that I bring in will be buffed up by X89. And then also they might be able to commit from other systems with no ships via the Sardak Commander. I don't know how it's going to go, but I want to at least try it out and see how it goes and report back.
Saucy. And now the other tech that was modified in this codex, also related to some ground combat shenanigans, Magen Defense Grid. The new text reads, when any player activates a system that contains one or more of your structures, Place 1 infantry from your reinforcement with each of those structures. At the start of ground combat on a planet that contains 1 or more of your structures, produce 1 hit and assign it to one of your opponent's ground forces. So the second part is the same as the old tech, and we just have an updated ability on when players activate a system that contains your structures, which happens often.
Yes, I mean, this tech famously, you don't see people grab it that often. It is the Arborec starting technology. Dane was pretty explicit in the live stream about it being a buff for the Arborec. While I'm not an Arborec player, I did start to think a little bit about, obviously you're going to have this when people activate you for combat or attacking you or whatever, but I also wondered if there was some kind of deal in conjunction with the Arborec commander that allows you to produce units. It just seems there's a way, maybe if you need to blossom a little bit and you have a homie who's willing to help out or take payment to like activate one of your systems, all of a sudden you have more ground troops popping up and you can build.
Yeah, more unlocked ground troops, mind you. So that's actually can be really useful if you have a planet you need to take or a combat you need to win for certain point scoring reasons. If it was previously inaccessible due to plastic, having this tech could make it an option. And depending on how many structures you have, this could really, really pop off.
To help me understand the impact of this new tech, I like to think through how it would actually work in a case. So let's say you have a planet that has a space dock and a PDS and no other units in the system. Someone activates you to come take that planet and snipe it away from you. All of a sudden, now you have 2 ground forces, 1 for each structure defending. And at the start of a combat, they take a hit. So even if they bring in 3 guys to take your empty planet, all of a sudden now it's a 2v3, they take a hit, and it's a 2v2 where you statistically have the advantage as the defender of the planet. Not to mention space cannon and all of that.
The ground game has gotten a buff, folks. We'll tell you that much.
I don't know if I'm going to be running out the door to grab this over something like plasma scoring if I need to go into the red tree. Like I'm not totally sold on it, but I do imagine feeling nice and cozy if I had L1 as my neighbor and they're hungrily eyeing my structures to just pick up Magen, have that defensive buff, and maybe just sleep a little bit easier once I've passed, and L1 is still sharking around the board looking to snipe my stuff.
So true, that's such a nice defensive tech against L1 specifically. It is nice that this one requires less prerequisites than X89 of the 2 updated techs, so I think if this was deep in the tech tree, maybe we wouldn't see it as often, but as an early red tech, it's a nice thing to pick up if you're going red all the way anyway, for sure. Or if you're Arborec and you start with it, that's nice. Arborec will never say no to more infantry.
Yeah, and I was thinking maybe I could see grabbing it if I am anticipating a Windslay or something like that, and I don't have another obvious tech to grab going into round 5 or something. Oh, maybe I could pick this up to try and hold my home system or something like that. But again, time will tell. I want to make actually just a bold prediction right here. I want to swing for the fences and say, because this tech in Arborec's hands now reminds me a little bit of Jolnar's E-Res siphons, where people just kind of activate them and split money, and it's kind of this deal-making scheme. I want to predict we will start to see a development of Arborec meta that uses this for deals to bolster their board presence.
I'd love to see that. That would be fun.
Who knows? We'll see. But I just keep an eye out and see if that starts to happen. I'm curious. And I think that does it for these 2 revised technologies in Codex IV. What do we have up next, Rand?
We're going to talk about the Galactic Events and the new scenario that the Codex has presented. So Galactic Events are each cards that kind of mix up the rules of the game in a sense, or how it works. One of them was the Hidden Agenda, which we've done a previous podcast about, as that event was previously leaked.
One of the Galactic Events is called Minor Factions, which basically puts unplayed factions' home systems on the board and gives players the ability to gain their commander ability.
There was also the Age of Exploration event,
which the Ventura Junkies tried out in a recent episode, along with Minor Factions. And what's fun about that is that there's now a mechanic where the board is revealed. So maybe fans of Fog of War would be interested in Age of Exploration, since you are going to be flipping tiles as the game progresses.
It's true. Aside from the Ghost's Hero, really it's the only thing in Twilight Imperium that lets you actually pick up system tiles in the game.
And we're all just little children playing with toys with our hands, and we
really want to pick up the tiles.
We want to pick up the tiles. We want to throw them across the room. eat them, all that good stuff. We also have Age of Commerce.
That's a game mode that really promotes trading and transactions. There's an unlimited amount of commodities that players could have, and people can even share techs with each other, which is kind of wild. I look forward to trying this and having Jolnar give me X89 for nothing in return.
Yeah, it's funny because in regular POK, obviously Jolnar sells their research agreement as a way to kind of quote unquote share techs. And Necro also is going to be kind of sharing, though maybe it's one-sided sharing of technology. But it's a little funny to imagine the possibilities with this, especially when like the Winslay comes in and only one person has Lightwave, but we all need Lightwave to slay somebody. But then the round after that, it comes and bites you in the ass because the person you gave Lightwave to slay someone last round is now slaying you, and it's coming for your home system.
That is juicy. I think everyone is going to make it deeper into tech trees if they try this Galactic event, and I look forward to seeing how that feels. I will go in playing Sardak and come out feeling like an educated fish.
Going like a grimy little bug.
And finally, the last Galactic event that was released with this codex, Total War, which is spicy. You accumulate these special commodities by destroying other players' units, and eventually when you get enough of these commodities, they translate directly into a victory point. So this is a game mode that very heavily rewards aggression on the board. I'm really excited to try a Total War game personally, and I'm actually really curious if, people in the community end up playing more of this Galactic event. Will it seep into regular vanilla TI meta? Will aggression be a little more accepted, a little more of an option as a player? Will people start to see the benefits of aggressive gameplay despite just getting like direct victory points from it, just in a normal TI sense?
Yeah, I mean, each one of these events has something that piques my interest, but Total War is for sure the one that I'm most interested in, and the one to me that shakes up the game the most, just because it introduces scoring conditions generated by just duking it out, taking other people's home systems. I mean, one part of it is that if you invade someone else's home system where they've been stocking up their commodities that they can trade in for a point, you gain those commodities. So if someone has accumulated 9 commodities from rounds of combat and you manage to take their home system, you grab those commodities, all of a sudden you're the one who's about to get a point rather than them.
There are more reasons to go after home systems than simply Windslaying, Darkening Skies, or trying to become a martyr. Or Mugging Shard.
Mugging Shard is a great phrase. Yeah, I know we all love we all love TI as it is with its strategic and competitive elements, but it's also fun sometimes to just go ham and start swinging on each other. And while you can play with the normal rule set and opt for a more aggressive table vibe, I kind of love this event because it actually arms the more aggressive table vibe with a way to score points. Instead of just being like, all right, well, now we're all being aggressive and making it harder to score points. We're being aggressive and scoring points along the way.
That is super fun.
I mean, also personally, I'm just warming up more and more to these optional events because to me, it's a fun way to reconnect with the operatic and thematic elements of the game in the midst of all the crunchy and diplomatic play that we're used to. Especially Total War, I feel like it just makes it so much easier to be like, all right, I'm swinging on you.
For sure. And I love that these galactic events can be played in combination with each other. It really just lends itself to a lot of replayability and just variation in how games play out, which there's already so much variation in TI, so congratulations. More variation is available.
They all sound good, and I hope to try out each of them in combination, maybe one day, all of them in one game.
And I'm sure as we get more gameplay in with these galactic events, you may see future podcasts about them in the way that we did the Hidden Agenda game recap. I am looking forward to doing a recap of my first ever Total War game.
Ooh, I can't wait. Maybe I'll play in it. We're going to war.
Total War.
Total War.
And the last edition of Codex IV was a scenario that you could play, Liberation of Ordinian.
So Liberation of Ordinian is this kind of specific game scenario with set factions. Extra and Federation of Soul are mandatory alliance partners. You have to have a Ghosts player, a Nazroka player. The Necrovirus player is like the villain of this game, and there's actually an extra stage 1 objective, which is just to win a combat against them. Extra and Soul also have a joint hero that they unlock when the Necrovirus has 5 victory points. They also have to agree to use it. So good luck if I'm extra and Nathan is soul. We're never going to agree to use this thing.
A game ends, no hero pop.
I also want us to check out these texts that Necro has in this scenario, which is very strange because we're so used to Necro just having the X token and the Y token to take other people's texts. Instead, they have these set faction technologies, one of which has 3 possible actions. Firstly, as an action, you can exhaust it to place 1 PDS on a planet you control. Alternatively, you can, as an action, exhaust the card to repair all of your damaged units. That's crazy. Or as an action, you can exhaust it and discard 1 action card to draw an action card. Feels more familiar to Necro players. And the other faction tech for Necro in this scenario is that when one of their ships is destroyed, they may produce a ship of the same type at a space dock in their home system. So as you kill the Necrovirus, they just keep popping up back at their home, and they just keep releasing that relentless torrent of evil little Necrovirus in your direction.
It's a really fun way to balance out being the table's target, right? Having these abilities that really make up for it. It makes you feel powerful. So I look forward to trying this out one day as well.
I actually thought of you, Rand, as the Necro player in this scenario, because you used to have that idea for a game one day where you wanted to start with everyone else's supports in your play area, so that you started at 5 VP, but if you start attacking, so like you were interested in this idea of being like the antagonist of the table in the past.
It's true. That was my concept for a birthday game. Sounds fun, right? Everyone come at me.
And you do like playing Necrovirus, so
It's perfect.
this scenario did make me actually think that maybe you would have fun being the souped up Necro versus the table being the villain.
I'm the table's villain anyway. I guess it's not that different from regular Necro me, so I'll take the souped up Necro.
You either die a Rand or live long enough to see yourself become a Nathan. And another little twist of this scenario, sad news for the Mechatol lovers like Rand out there, there is no Mechatol Rex in this scenario. It's been replaced by a 0/0 Ordinian in the middle of the game board.
My Schmeckatol.
Clearly a scenario kind of funneling all the other players towards fighting Necro, but of course I'm sure there's room for some infighting and conflict amongst them because
There are other points too.
there are other points too.
And then there's also a special stage 2 that gets flipped, which is to control Ordinian, the center planet.
So there are all these fun wrinkles. Also, the Nazroka player starts with one of the new relics, Circlet of the Void, and the Nomad player starts with the Neuraloop. So that's pretty fun to just get the new content into the game right from the first round. But I'm also just intrigued by this mode of a mandatory alliance and the extra and soul players working towards 12 and 10 points while everyone else is working towards 10. All the asymmetrical elements of this scenario are kind of fun and interesting to me.
That's true. So much of the fun in TI is above table balancing, because what happens on the table can be so asymmetrical and so imbalanced and random. This mode seems like it really gets your balancing hats on as a player. Like, okay, what needs to be done? Who's the threat? Those people are allies. So that's the Necro. They have better tech than us, but they're also the threat. So I feel like there's a lot of assessment that would go into playing this scenario.
Yeah, there's actually a fiction piece included at the beginning of this codex that takes place during this scenario for all you lore heads out there. I personally have not consumed much TI lore, but I did read the story and had a good time. Check it out. I was a little biased actually because it did prominently feature an extra character, which I appreciated because I like the extra. And that is it for the TI content in this new codex.
We're thrilled to have these new toys to play with and new Galactic Events to try out. We've already started to see them in this weekend's Stooge tournament game, and we're gonna see them in the upcoming games, including mine, next weekend, so tune in for the last game of the first round of this year's tournament.
Oh yeah, everybody come watch Rand claim her seat in the final game. We are ready to see it. We are rooting for her.
That's the goal. I want to get it through Neuraloop.
Ooh. All right, everybody. We'll see you at the stream. In the meantime,
Happy TI.
happy TI. Take care. Hope everyone has fun with the new stuff released in Codex IV. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Twilight Imperium Junkies podcast.
If you like what we do and want to support the show, check out our Patreon, where amongst other things, you can vote on topics for future episodes.
Keep up with the TI Junkies series by subscribing on YouTube.
Until next time, keep stooging, or maybe don't.
Unless you're my stooge.